is what we do when we're not sailing. But we're supposed to sail. G'day and welcome to Trev White Sailing. I thought I'd just have a chat today. It's been a while since I did any podcasts. Originally I started the Sailing Channel doing podcasts and I didn't really want to do video. I thought that video would take a lot of time and wasn't something I was completely into, and to be honest, it's probably true. I did, however, enjoy podcasts because you could be sailing along and you could be rambling shit and you just... expressing your thoughts or the situation or talking about equipment and a variety of other reasons, while we talk about things for sailing. And so I found podcasting to be quite enjoyable, and you could discuss a range of subjects, and I listen to podcasts myself quite regularly. But I got into video because I felt that if I was going to do, YouTube or podcasting, then I should probably add video to it. And it has been enjoyable. I mean, like as we get older, you need more challenges, and sitting on a boat can be a little bit mind-numbing at times. Like there's navigation and weather and tides and rocks, and everything's trying to kill you all the time. But that just becomes a daily grind, and you get used to it. You don't think about it. It just becomes second nature to navigate through hazardous places. But I felt that I needed a new challenge, so initially I took up podcasting and I used a variety of different tools, and then I decided to get into doing the video. So I had some pretty rudimentary stuff. I think I had a GoPro and maybe a mobile phone, and I had an old Canon camera. And since then I bought a few additional cameras, and it's actually good fun. You get to play with different equipment, explore different ideas. I'm generally using DJI Osmo 3 or DJI Action 5 cameras now, and I've just bought a 360 camera, which is it's a bit of a mind stretch trying to get that thing working, and but it's interesting how many different camera angles you can get out of one piece of footage. So that's quite fun. But I gave away doing videos for probably a month and a half. I just had a gutful of doing them, and I don't really know why. I just stopped enjoying it for a while, and I had loads and loads of footage. I've still got loads of footage, so I'm releasing footage at the moment. Just taking a little break from sailing, and occasionally you need that. Like living on a boat, sailing to paradises, exploring beautiful places, and meeting wonderful people is awesome. It really is. It's absolutely awesome. Love it. But it's also tiring. Being on a boat full time can be very tiring. There's non-stop maintenance. Doesn't matter what anybody says about a boat. A boat is just one constant grind. You are just fixing shit every day. And if you have a day with no maintenance, that's a day to be celebrated, I think. But at the moment I'm on land. It's not rocking. I don't have to worry about the weather. The boat's in a secure position, so it's awesome. I'm catching up and doing some video editing and learning new cameras, and just doing some other things. Travelling around a bit, catching up with some people, doing some jobs that need to be done, finding some equipment that needs to be replaced on the boat. It never stops. There's always something that has to be fixed. But I in the last couple of months I had to really think about why I was doing videos. I know why I started doing podcasts. It was just a way to while away the hours whilst I was sailing, and it was really easy to podcast while sailing. You could just be talking about a central theme, the weather, autopilots, navigation, and whilst you're doing it you could be relaying your thoughts on the subject. So I'm definitely going to get back into podcasting. I think I do miss it. And video is a lot more time consuming. The more camera cameras you buy and the equipment you buy, the complexity of editing becomes more difficult, and I'm not really a natural when it comes to editing. You know, like I think if you're a 12-year-old on an iMac, you know, would have far more skills than I have, and they would do it in half the time. I spend hours putting videos together, and still, you know, they're okay. They could be better, and I'm trying to make them better, but it's not, I don't have that artistic flair. So I went back to first principles. Why am I doing videos? Should I continue doing videos? And I came to the ultimate decision that looking back at my videos, whilst I see flaws in them everywhere, it's awesome to think back or look back and see the places you visited. And if no other reason, that is why I'm going to continue doing videos, is because I get to record the places I've been and the people I've met and the things I've seen. You would just forget a lot of this stuff. And you know, I've travelled around the world a lot over the last 40 years, been to some awesome places, worked with some amazing people, you know, done so many very cool things. And I have hardly any footage of it. I worked in an area where, you know, carrying a camera around and taking footage of things was sort of frowned upon. So now I can take as much footage as I want. And, you know, my family gets to see where I'm visiting, and that's also great. You get to include people. They get to see some places, and then they go, well, can we come and visit? And they go, yeah, of course. And it's less of a surprise for them about what boat life is going to be like. I mean, boat life is not all caviar and champagne. I wish it was, but I don't particularly like caviar or champagne, so it's more a beer type of life for me, and maybe a beer and a burger life. That's what I like to think of. And you know, so when people come, they understand what the life on the boat is going to be, and it's not a huge surprise. And I think that is great. Often I get crew on the boat as well, and I get just get them to watch a few videos and see what it's like, and you know, that way they understand what it's going to be like for them because they see the experiences of other crew. And you know, whilst I can edit some of my swearing out, I guess my general personality comes through, so people can understand whether they will like me, and then I have to evaluate whether I will like them. Living and working on a boat is, you know, it can be tough. It's a tight proximity. I have a monohull. There's very little room. There's hardly any private cabins. The only place you really get privacy is the head, and you don't get to stay in there for very long if you've got a lot of crew on board. So yeah, the videos help to detail what life on TinTin is like, and I think that's a great thing to have. So yeah, that's my main reason to make videos. This year I'm going to try and make better videos, put a bit more thought and production into it. I don't think they're going to be, you know, mind-bogglingly amazing. I'm going to try and do better audio. I think that's somewhere I've let myself down, is, you know, not using a microphone enough. And often when you're sailing, you know, you've got other things going on. You know, like you pick up a camera to film something that's interesting, and you know, it's not scripted half the time. It's just, you know, you're sailing along and you go, well, that's pretty cool. I'm going to pick up a camera, and the camera I often pick up is this Osmo 3 that I've got in my hand right at the moment. And it does have a little mic. I've got a little mic right here, and generally the mic does have much better sound, but in that moment, last thing I think about is picking up the mic. But I'm going to try and do that better. Bought a couple of smaller mics, the DJI Mic Minis, and that way they can just link in with this camera or with the action camera, and hopefully that will give us better sound, because the sound on a lot of my videos is basically crap. Yeah, there's a lot of wind, but that's life. I mean, you know, sometimes you're standing in the cockpit and trying to talk to someone at the bow of the boat, and you can't hear each other. It is blowing its ass off. It's howling a gale. And, you know, I think some people just need to realise that is what life on a boat is. It's windy. That's why we have sailboats. The wind pushes us along. It also it makes it difficult to hear at times. But it does sound crap through a microphone on a camera. That I will give you. So I'm going to try and do that better. But I also think, like people get to experience what it's like. Sometimes, you're just hanging on for dear life. And the wind noise is just part of sailing. So it probably won't go completely because I'm not going to edit it all out. But I'm going to try and improve the sound of my videos. I think sound is probably one of the key things, and done a bit of research again, back to first principles of video editing and making YouTube videos, and sound is definitely one of those things, and mine does sound pretty average, but we have the means of improving it. We've just got to take action and do it. But I've got a couple of videos coming up. I've got a video sailing to Taupo. We're in Taupo at the moment, and sailing to Wallis and Futuna. Now, Wallis and Futuna is one of the most amazing places I've been to. Windy as fuck. It is possibly the windiest place I've ever been to, and I was looking at the wind records, going, this place blows all year round. Like, there is not an off season, and it's maybe why it's so isolated. There's not much of a boating industry there. The people who use a new form of dugout canoes for racing and having a bit of fun, but it's just a windy wave action is ridiculous. It's hard to find an anchorage where you get protection, and the ones you're in are surrounded by reef. It's a really challenging place, but it's also awesome. Like, you don't have a tourist industry. Like, I don't even know if they get tourists go there. They must. They get a few, some die-hard French people, because it's a French colony essentially. And but there's no taxis. There's no bus system, unless school buses. You might be able to catch a school bus, but we're typically hitched while we're there, and it's amazing. Like, someone will pull you over and go, "Hey, Trevor," just because on the grapevine they've heard that you're the guy anchored down in the bay, and your name is Trevor. So they know your first name. They pick you up because you're walking towards that direction, and they just know that you want to go home. And we had the local priest pull over one day. We were walking 4 or 5 k's up to the service station to get some fuel, and he drove us to the service station. He drove us back, and then the next day he drove us around the island and showed us all the churches. And it's one of the things I love about the Pacific. It's typically they're all Christian countries. You have a smattering of other religions through there, but Christianity is by and far the largest religion in the Pacific. And it makes the Pacific a really wonderful place to be. You don't have all the doom and gloom and violence that you do in the Middle East, and I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but Christianity has brought a lot of prosperity to these places. It's stopped the self-harm that was there for years, thousands of years. I mean, it's not that long ago that places like Vanuatu still had cannibals and headhunters. So did Fiji. We're only talking 100 years ago, and in some cases less than that. Now you go to Vanuatu, and it's one of the most warm and friendly, wonderful places you can go. I mean, you could start a fight, you're probably going to regret it, but it's such a friendly place. I mean, the only exceptions would be PNG and the Solomons. Those two islands, or island groups, tend to still have a lot of problems, but generally the people are wonderful. It's just the domestic issues which have created real drama in those islands. Everywhere else where they've adopted Christianity, it's just so friendly and easy to be, helpful. I shake my head and go, like, it's so damn great sailing in the Pacific. People are just so awesome. So there's a big tick to Christianity, and I'm afraid the other religions, they just don't seem to be doing quite as well from that perspective. I look at a lot of worked a lot in the Middle East, and Afghanistan and places like that, and Africa, wherever there's Islam, it all seems to be doom and gloom and bloodshed. So they're the places I don't want to go sailing. I don't want to visit shitholes. I'm worried about being shot at. I want to go and visit places where people are just super friendly, where people are enjoying life, where family is still a wonderful thing, and that's what you get in the Pacific. You really do. Like you get that in bucket loads. I spent most of the season in Tonga, and it is awesome. I mean, Tonga has its own problems. There's it's not as prosperous as it should be. There's not a lot of work. There's some levels of corruption. You have a ridiculous amount of Chinese people there. Every shop in Tonga is owned by the Chinese. So if China decides to shut the door, then Tongans are going to starve. That I don't like. I think the Tongan government has made an error there. But the Tongan people are very family focused. They're awesome people, super friendly. Fantastic rugby guys. It's great to go and watch a high school rugby match. I mean, they're built like 30-year-old men, big dudes, and they're only 15, 16. No wonder they're exported to New Zealand and Australia, and play professional rugby. They're very good at it. But yeah, I mean, it's such a awesome place to travel around. Like it's places like Tapu, awesome. There's what we love about the Pacific is probably what they don't love. I love the family aspect and the simplicity, the lack of Western influence. I guess for a lot of the young people there, they want that. They want mobile phones and cars and motorbikes and all of these things. But at the same time, it makes the place really, easy to get around. People will still stop and have a chat. They'll invite you in, sit down to have lunch. Walk around an island all day with you because, they have the time to do it. No one goes hungry in these places because there's always enough food. I mean, if there was a cyclone, it would make it difficult. The gardens get knocked around. But, there's an ocean to provide fish. There's gardens to provide vegetables. There's pigs, which are plentiful, and birds in many places. So no one goes hungry. And I think that is also awesome. I look at our Western cultures, and whenever there's some sort of incident, bushfires, floods, people really do it tough because they have no reserves. And that's one of the things I like about the islands. Like nearly everybody still has a garden, and they need a garden. They don't have a corner shop. Tapu is a classic example. They have one shop on the island, and most of the food in there is crap. It's corned beef and biscuits and milk and some baby powder and things like that. Some essentials, but the food is pretty average, particularly the food they're getting in there. And it can be a month, 2 months between ferry services. So it has to be food that will last a long period. But, the local produce is awesome. You've got fresh fish and plentiful in most places. You've got pigs everywhere because they grow pigs. You've got massive gardens, and everybody has a garden. Like you cannot exist without a garden. And they have big gardens so they can feed the whole family, and people work the gardens. And it's generational. They've been handed from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And they know their lineage. They know where the lands come from. They know where the neighbour's land starts and where theirs stops. And, I was chatting to one guy and he's talking about someone was doing a bit tough. That guy doesn't go hungry. He goes around to someone else's place and they'll feed him. People drop food off to him. So even though someone's going through a hard spell, the community are looking after them and making sure they don't go hungry. And I was travelling around Vanuatu a while ago, and there's no homeless people because they they pick them up and they take them back to the village. And it's the accountability of the village to look after their own. And I think that is awesome. I mean, we don't have that in Western culture. You know, people end up on the streets. We worry more about refugees and immigrants than what we do our own people. We spend a fortune on people from other places when we should be spending that money on our own. You know, we should be subsidising our young families to have children. Instead, we're paying a fortune to, you know, put people in accommodation from other countries. Or we're giving so much money to other countries for no return. It's just, you've got to shake your head. You know, charity should start at home, and it should be based on fostering our own countries, not trying to save everybody else. And I mean, a lot of these people don't want to be saved, they just want our money. You know, the money I do see spent in the Pacific goes to people who need it, but you know, people still don't appreciate it. Do we get a good return on that investment? I'm not sure we do. I think we could build closer ties with the Pacific. I know Australia and New Zealand do it. You know, AusAid programs and New Zealand aid programs. I mean, I think they're fantastic. They are doing good work. I like the fact that we're importing, you know, well, not importing per se. We have labour exchange programs with a lot of Pacific countries. And if I was going to take people from any country, I would take them from the Pacific. And, you know, because culturally we're more aligned than people who hate us from Africa and the Middle East. You know, and most of those people who work in Australia are really grateful. You know, they go to Australia, they do fruit picking, or they work in meat works, or they work in generally farming related fields, which is pretty reasonable considering they are very based on the land, so it's second nature to them. And you know, they come home and build a house, or they, you know, go and buy a boat, and then, you know, that provides a means of getting fishing, and so they can feed their family and sell some of the fish. Most of them, you know, have applied that money to something worthwhile, and I think that's awesome. You know, like, and they all enjoy working in Australia and New Zealand, so that is really interesting to see. And you know, some go back every season, and you know, because there's more work in Australia and New Zealand, and there will be. You know, like most of our young people don't want to work on the farms. You know, we have they get paid too much to sit in their arse. So I remember as a kid, you know, I worked fruit picking. You know, it was a great job. You get to travel around, get paid. You know, work was quite hard, but you know, it was good fun. It was a bit of an adventure. These days, you know, young people are too busy locking themselves in a dark room playing on a computer game, sadly. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about sailing in the Pacific. If you're going to do it, or going to think about doing it, just go and do it. Just, you know, head whatever direction you've got to head and end up in the Pacific. It's and if you're thinking about doing it for a year, think again. You know, you could probably do it 3 or 4 years. It's stable. I mean, you've got to watch out for cyclones. You know, they are a real thing. But there's places, more and more places, where you can secure your boat. You can go high or you can go low. You know, I've been going back to New Zealand regularly and out of the cyclone season, and then I go back up. So it's a week each way. You know, yeah, it's like it gets a bit lumpy at times, but it's no worse than anywhere else. But you definitely want to plan for more than 1 year. You know, sailing in the Pacific, there is so much to see. Like, it is a massive, massive piece of water. And there are so many countries and so many islands. And yeah, I think I could be sailing around here for 10 years. And I could be. I mean, I was planning to do a year in the Pacific. I think this is my 4th year, maybe the 5th year in the Pacific. And there's still more places I want to see. And, you know, it is just such an awesome place. Like, I look at other places to go. Like, I go Asia. I'd like to go up through Asia and Japan and, you know, Thailand, Malaysia, Indo, and then I'd like to get up into the Med. But I mean, you look at most of these places, and they're not stable. Like you have weather events, which are everywhere, but you have, domestic and international issues, terrorism, wars. The countries themselves can be unstable. The populations in some places are very unstable, are not very welcoming. Whereas in the Pacific, I know my money is being, used to good, or put to good use. It's going into an economy where people, appreciate it. I haven't been to a country yet where, it's been. I've been to one country, which was New Caledonia the other year, and they're having civil unrest, and it was quite sad to see. I mean, I think without the French there, New Caledonia would be a basket case. They've just got to find some middle ground where, France and the indigenous population, build a future, because, basically they need it. But it's an awesome country. It's a shame I didn't get to see more of it. We'll go back when it's a bit more stable, and we didn't have any real issues, but other people had experienced some problems there. When I was up in Papua New Guinea, there was a lot of violence, and it's not a place I'd go with women or children. But generally everywhere else, it's awesome, and I recommend Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu. I would say New Caledonia is getting better. All of the little islands above them and around them. French Polynesia, like I hear mixed reports. Like I've been planning to go there for a while, but it's an upwind sail to get there from Australia and New Zealand, and I get a lot of mixed reports of just animosity towards sailing vessels. So I have this view: go where you're treated best, and at this stage, it's not French Polynesia. So Tonga is just awesome. Fiji is great. Vanuatu was awesome. And these are countries where it's still really simple, and they're emerging into the 20th century. That's what it feels like. These people are just living very simple lives. That's one thing I love about sailing. I don't want to go somewhere where everybody's got a mobile phone and the big screen TV, and they're driving an EV. I want to go somewhere where people have dugout canoes and living a simple life, and that's what I sail for, is to get that experience. And you can see people changing. Like the change is happening very rapidly. So if you're thinking of doing a sail across the Pacific, now is the time to do it. Technology is going to enter these countries as it has in Africa and Asia, and it will change dramatically. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's how things should happen. Like these countries all want better health. They want better technology, and the technology will give them much better resources. It'll improve the health system in those countries, but at the same time, it'll steal, a simple life, and they'll have all the same bullshit that we have in the West. And I'm there to experience the simplicity of life. Get away from the bullshit. The living in a city where you drive 10 kilometres and you pay for 2 tolls, and it's $50 a day for parking, and you feel like you've got to spend $100 a day just to exist, and you never get ahead. Whereas I might spend in some places in the Pacific $400 a month if I'm lucky. I've just bought a heap of food, and it it goes a long way, and that's being generous. I mean, I'm really generous when I'm buying produce. I never barter or bargain on anything. I pay full price. I always give tips, I don't give tips. I generally pay full price, and and I swap fuel and other things for food when I'm in different places, because fuel is a is difficult to get in places. So, people have veggies and garden patches, and they want fuel for their outboard because it's, they're just remote. They're very happy to, swap some veggies and that for fuel. So I always carry spare fuel to swap with locals for fresh veggies or pawpaws, pineapples, things like that. So, but yeah, the Pacific is awesome. And so yeah, I think this is long enough. I just wanted to get back into, podcasting and talk about where I'm at. The rest of this season is Wallis for tuna, onto Fiji, and the 2026 season will be Fiji, mainly Fiji. So, but yeah, if you're thinking about going to Wallis and for tuna, definitely do it. But be warned, it's windy. It is a very, very windy place. But yeah, a couple of videos coming up of Wallis and for tuna. I recommend them. It's an awesome place. If you love churches, it's a great place. Like I've never seen so many churches, except maybe Adelaide in Australia. But yeah, there's some beautiful, grand churches, and the whole island is Catholic, which is unusual. French influence is significant there. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and have a great day. Safe sailing.